Welcome to the Mental Fitness Podcast. Today's entrepreneurs are mental athletes that have to know about the mind and how to keep it fit. Our goal is to increase our resilience against stress and anxiety, optimize our productivity, motivation, and optimism by learning about the human mind through psychology, neuroscience, and human behavior. I'm your host Ozan. I'm a founder who has experienced the challenges of launching and growing a business and a keen student of human behavior over the last 15 years. I'll share with you what I know and learn. Hundreds of impactful, behavior-changing ideas are waiting to be discovered by us. Let's begin now. Hello and welcome to this episode of the Mental Fitness Podcast for entrepreneurs. I'm your host Ozan, and today's topic is why entrepreneurs need mindfulness skills. So mindfulness, especially in these days, is an overused term, and it became quite boring for some people. Actually, I empathize with them, but it is actually really important, and there are a few reasons why that is important. So let's get down to that and understand the real structure of that and what mindfulness does to the brain and how it helps entrepreneurs retain their mental fitness. So the first idea is that meditation, including mindfulness, builds a few muscles in the brain, and I categorize them in two main headings. So one of them is the awareness of current thoughts, and the second one is the power to redirect your attention. So these sort of things. First of all, an awareness of what's going on through your mind, what you're thinking about, and then the actual capacity to focus on other things. Therefore, have a say over what thoughts you spend time on. It is difficult to try to unthink of something. It's quite impossible, but you can redirect your attention away from it. So you might be an entrepreneur in this modern and technological world, but your brain itself and the biology it has belongs to a more ancient era. We are wired to recognize false positives rather than false negatives. This is an innate human tendency. It is necessary. It's an adaptation for survival. Imagine a situation in the savannah where you hear the sound of an animal walking and coming through the grass. Imagine that you were wrong and it was a false positive. It was just the wind. That's okay. You still live. But if you get a false negative, you think, it's just the wind, and it actually turns out to be a lion, then you die. So because of this very, very simple mechanics there, we are more attuned to recognizing false positives rather than false negatives. So in a way, your brain itself, it is of course your best friend in solving problems, analytical thinking, making a good judgment in a variety of areas, but it can also be your worst enemy when it comes to times like these, if you do not know the exact mechanisms of what's going on. So that's actually the core reason of me doing this podcast and possibly why you're listening to this as well. Awareness of the processes and the logic of what happens and why that happens within the brain gives us more access to understanding and then affecting it. The productive versus the destructive thought. So my first conceptualization of this while taking the notes for this podcast was, okay, we are talking about awareness of current thoughts. So that skill that you've earned through mindfulness and meditation, and how that helps you in your daily life as an entrepreneur. And my first notes going back to that was recognize worrying thoughts or thoughts that have fear or negative aspects in that. But I thought this was not the best conceptualization. I think a better conceptualization is that of a productive thought versus a destructive thought. A productive thought might have elements of worry within it. That's why I think it's a better conceptualization, because worry and survival it's a good drive. Many entrepreneurs who were self-made, who have made billions, or were really impactful to the world in meaningful ways, they were in a lot of the circumstances also driven by fear, by a worry of a bad life. So worry can be productive in some ways, but it should also have, so how do you differentiate between a productive and destructive thought if worry and some negative emotions are not what you're looking at? Well, the answer is a productive thought, as well as having some negative thoughts, for lack of a better word, also have a good dose of positive emotions. If it is all worry, fear, anger, and so on, it is toxic. But if it has a certain element of worry within it, but also an eagerness towards something, an anticipation, a positive emotion, a love of doing something, or a care about the world or other people. So if it has all these, then it can be a productive thought. So once you have awareness of current thoughts, the second step is to actually to evaluate the merit of that thought. Perhaps there is a reason to worry. And if there's a reason to worry, then it is good to pay attention to that. So the second stage is, once you have awareness of the current thoughts, the second stage is evaluate the merit of that thought. And if there is no value in it, okay, no, direct your attention away from it. Yes, there is some merit in it, and you can only say if there is or there is not a merit in it by actually thinking on that, reflecting on that, and taking some time to respect actually the opinion that your brain has so kindly brought to your attention. If you feel that there can be a merit to that thought, build an action plan, or take a note to build an action plan around that. And once you have done that, once you have taken note of that in your mobile phone, in your notebook, in your computer, wherever, and once it has found its way into your to-do list, into your or things to think list, then your brain has done its job, and you can now direct your attention away from it. Actually, the act of recognizing that thought and giving it that reflective attention, it can sometimes, at least in my case, be a very good way of directing your attention away from it, because you feel a sense of accomplishment. It's almost as if your brain itself has done the hard mining work of finding that nugget of valuable information and provided it to you. Now all you have to do is think about it, but in a way that you set the terms, you set when, how long, and under which context. That is very important. And the final part of this puzzle is meditation is, yes, it is one way to actually build this skill, and mindfulness meditation specifically, but it is not the only way. You can do this by practicing mindful of your thoughts throughout the day, and by directing your attention to the productive thoughts. This is kind of a game that you play with yourself. It is kind of a self-development challenge in a way to reflect back on your thoughts and turn this into a reflex of throughout the week. Whenever you feel that your mind has started to wander off, actually immediately as you recognize that, try to stop that and ask yourself and go through this checklist. Evaluate the merit of that. First, recognize, is it productive or destructive? Evaluate the merit. No, direct your attention away from it. Yes, take a note of it and move on. And if, as you do this, and as you do more of this, it is going to become a kind of a reflex. It's going to be a game, a type of a game that you play with yourself, that you get better at every time you make a discovery. This is not going to only build your respect in yourself. It's also going to be a healing process between you, so your prefrontal cortex and that part of you that says I am, versus that part of your brain you don't always have a control of, where emotions come from, where sometimes worries just fall on your lap. So it's going to actually be an exercise, an improvement of self-loving and self-respect as well. So that's maybe the bonus benefit of that. So that was the core idea of this session. This is why I think entrepreneurs need mindfulness skills more than anything else, because we have to be on top of our game. We have to be mentally fit, because there are failures within the day. There is rejection from clients and customers. It's quite difficult to strategize for the long term when you're also thinking about how to make a living in the short term. There are people who depend on you. So it's a quite complex thing, and you don't always have the best prescription or a list of actions that you need to follow from A to Z to be successful. It's much more complex than that. So you have to rely on your instincts, your problem-solving abilities, and your mental state needs to be in tip-top shape. So these all work in tandem. Hope this was useful to you. It's a pleasure to be talking about this with the people that are listening to this. And if you are listening to this, feel free to let me know. It's also important and valuable for me. Wherever you're listening this, please do let me know if this is useful, why it's useful to you, and what other topics you would like to hear about. Well, take care. Bye-bye.